Good afternoon, Falmouth. I'm Geoff Wyman for FCTV. I'm the Government Access Coordinator for Falmouth Community Television. We're here in our studio today with a special guest, Amy Schram from the Better Business Bureau. Hello, Amy, and welcome to our studio here in Falmouth. This is your first time here.
It is. Thank you so much for having me.
Excellent. And today we're going to talk scams and identifying scams, whether or not you've been a victim and how to avoid some of these things, and talk a little bit about the tips and tricks. And we're going to be looking at some predatory people and their basically their tactics on how to get your money.
Sure.
So give me a little bit about your background and what you kind of do from day to day.
Sure. So I'm the Senior Community Relations Specialist with the Better Business Bureau. Our office is located in Marlborough, Massachusetts, but we serve all of Eastern Mass, all of Maine, all of Vermont, and all of Rhode Island. And I really love coming down to the Cape, so I appreciate you having me down here, especially when it's not snowing. It's beautiful today. We're very lucky. And what I do is essentially get out into the public and deliver programs on identity theft and scams every single day, delivering between 20 to 30 programs a month throughout that service area, and just really educating anyone within our communities, certainly the senior population, because they are certainly a target of these scammers and identity thieves that are out there. And also just let people know a little bit about the BBB and who we are, because I think a lot of people are familiar with the name Better Business Bureau, namely because we're a nonprofit that's been around for 106 years. But a lot of people utilize our free services after they've had a problem with a product or a service or a business, file a complaint through us, we reach out to the business, we help serve as the middleman. We really want consumers to know that you can contact us beforehand. We have a database of over 5 million businesses that have been rated and reviewed, and it just takes a little bit of time to do a little bit of research on the front end of things. You're less likely to have an issue on the back end of things. And you can contact us via our website, bbb.org, or our phone number Monday through Friday and speak to one of our customer care specialists and ask about a business, about a charity organization you might be curious about, or a scam. We're going to touch upon some scams today, but something new will pop up tomorrow, and there'll be a new tactic the next day, and the identity thieves are constantly enhancing their tactics as technology is enhancing. And so if you have a question, you received a phone call, an email, a letter, contact our office, and we can help validate whether or not it's legitimate or not.
Great, so let's get right into it. Obviously, this is Falmouth, Massachusetts, and our demographic is kind of lean toward the more elderly, senior population.
Sure.
So that's kind of the target that a lot of these artists they try to target the elderly, because they're not used to the technology maybe, and you get a phone call, and some of these phone calls that you'll get from scam artists are your area code, and actually the same 3 digits that your town might be. Here in Falmouth, it's like 548 and 540.
Sure.
You see those all the time. So talk to me a little bit about some of the scams that are going on now with the phone. And you mentioned, as we were talking before, an IRS phone scam that's happening right now because it's tax season.
Absolutely. That IRS phone scam's been happening for a few years now. And it's interesting because we know that the IRS will never call us, but if we answer the phone and someone on the other end says that they're the IRS, it makes you nervous, at least for the first few moments, because you think, oh no, what did I do? And they're not saying anything too outlandish, some of these scam artists. They're not saying, you owe the IRS $20,000. They know that we're not really going to fall for that, because we'd have to make that to owe it. And so they're saying very basic things. You misfiled, or you checked off a wrong box, or this or that. They can use the pressure-filled tactics, we're going to send the National Guard after you, but we're less likely to fall for that. So they're going to try something a little bit more conversational and make us feel like it is legitimate. But well, it's interesting. We used to be able to say that the IRS would never call us. They are starting this new year to roll out that they are hiring a third party to make phone calls on behalf of them to collect dues or fees that haven't been paid. However, they will only contact you, first of all, by mail, 2 pieces of mail, 2 notifications, and they will only do so if you've purposefully evaded paying your taxes. So for most of us, we should still expect to not have to receive that phone call. But even if you do, if you receive a phone call from someone saying that they're from the IRS, really any business, hang up on that individual in whatever manner you like and find the appropriate number for a local IRS office, let's say, and just call them back. If it's legitimate, it's going to be okay if you hang up on that person that's called you and called them back. They're going to appreciate that you took the time to do that, as opposed to assuming that the caller was actually from the IRS. But the chances of it happening is so slim. We're better off assuming that the call is false.
Okay, so that's the IRS one. Give me some other examples of other phone scams. What might a person start talking to you about if it's maybe not the IRS, but some other phone number that you identify as being close by? Could be someone you know, but you don't know their number. what's some of the other tactics?
Sure. So the Medicare phone scam is probably the newest phone scam targeting seniors, and most specifically because Medicare is now changing the numbers that are on the Medicare card. So it's right now, for anyone over the age of 65 that has a Medicare card, it's a Social Security number. And so thankfully they're taking it off and they're creating a unique number for every individual over the age of 65. And because seniors are going to be receiving new cards, scam artists are piggybacking off of that, and they're calling and they're saying that they're Medicare, and they're calling and saying, as you know, we'll be rolling out a new card, or you'll be receiving it on this date, but we just need to verify your social, or verify that we have the right Nancy Smith, and is this your address, and asking for very basic pieces of information. But we're giving it a little bit more leisurely than we may have for other phone scams, because Medicare is a legitimate organization, and we may already know that we're receiving the new card, and so we're kind of expecting a call like that, but it shouldn't come in. And if it does, hang up on them just like you would do the IRS, or someone claiming to be from your bank, or someone claiming to be from an electric company. Hang up with them, find the appropriate number, and call them back, especially because, as you mentioned, we can't really rely on our caller ID screens anymore. It's really, really tough. There are scrambling devices that are out there, and it does exactly what it sounds like. It is a device, it could be a free app that you download on your phone, and it scrambles the number that appears on your screen, and it looks like it's coming from somewhere local, because the scammers that are calling from Jamaica and Dubai know that we're more likely to answer if it says somewhere on Cape Cod than if it says Jamaica popping up on our caller ID screen.
Right, it's not just the phone number, the actual, it says Falmouth there. So it's crazy.
It is.
Something popped into my head when we were talking about the phones, internet purchasing.
Yes.
Is that safe?
It really, there's a few different factors to consider before doing really anything online banking, online shopping, anything of that nature. You really want to make sure that you are using your own secure private connection to the internet, your private Wi-Fi. So you're in your own home. I know there are a lot of local places, libraries, senior centers, coffee shops that offer public Wi-Fi. And even if they give you a password to get into that Wi-Fi, they're also giving that same password to other people. So you're connected within a community that you don't even realize. And it's not that, the library is not a safe place to be, but that Wi-Fi in particular, I wouldn't use to do anything where you're typing your credit card number into your own phone, or doing any sort of online banking, any sort of purchases of that nature. If you're home on your own private secure network, that's step number one. Step number two is making that you're on a legitimate website before you purchase anything. And there are ways to validate that. You can contact the Better Business Bureau and say, is this a legitimate website? Even in a weird way, searching the internet, via a search engine, Google or Yahoo or whatever it might be, to determine whether something is legitimate before purchasing from it. And then if you're going to make that purchase, for a fact it's a legitimate site, I would still recommend you using a credit card versus a debit card for any and all online transactions, for sure.
And why is that? Is it because a credit card company is more likely to reimburse you for false purchases?
Yes and no. It's more about the fact that if someone gets a hold of your debit card information and they use it, the money is immediately extracted from your account. So you can still get that money back. You still have to fill out paperwork, alert them, put a fraud alert out. It takes about 2 to 3 months to get the paperwork going, and you can get that money back, but you may be without it for those 2 to 3 months, as opposed to the credit card, where somebody might get a hold of that number, use it, and then you would notice it on your statement or your bill when your bill comes in. If it happens to bypass your credit card company and it actually goes through, you're never without that money while you're filling out the paperwork and taking the 2 to 3 months to get it squared away. And so it's just safer on that end of things, whereas you're not in the respect that you're not without the funds, because that can be really tricky.
Yeah, there are a lot of people on fixed income, so that's a great
Exactly.
point. I wanted to get into one of the bigger factors that personally frightens me about identity theft and taking your money illegally is the fact that card scanning skimmers. How do I identify those, and how do we keep up with checking on if that's been a problem for you and you've been victimized?
Sure. Skimming devices are such a huge issue because they're virtually undetectable, some of them. Some skimming devices are just wires that are connected internally, let's say at a gas station pump. Somehow the scam artist, the identity thief, can get inside and wire something so that when you swipe your card, all of the information that's on your card is sent over to whoever it was that had created that device. And you really can't tell. We do sort of say, kind of be that person and sort of move around on the keypad and move around, you can, jiggle where you would swipe your card. But still in those instances, because we can't really determine where these skimming devices are going to end up, but we can determine whether or not we're swiping our debit or our credit card. And we really recommend, even beyond online purchases, utilizing your credit card as often as possible. And gas stations, restaurants, and grocery stores, for me personally, are just 3 of those locations that I just feel we're better off utilizing that credit card, because you're more likely to, or there has been more reports of skimming devices being found in those locations. And also important to note that a skimming device is really anything with a camera. So you could be in line at the grocery store ready to pay the cashier for your groceries, and someone behind you could just look like they're texting or on their phone, and they could be snapping a picture of your card as you're handing it to the cashier to make your payment. So it's anything of that nature. And it's just about being extra cautious, extra diligent, and just like you said, just to monitor. That's really all we can do, because we can't control where the skimming devices are, but we can control whether or not we're monitoring our accounts, which is so important.
This is another thing I want to touch upon. I mean, people do monitor their accounts and, checking how much they've spent, how much money they do have. But if they are looking for potential scamming and maybe purchases that they haven't actually done, do you have any tips and tricks as someone's scanning their account online, like what to look for?
Sure. Monitoring is so important. Monthly, if you can set up with your bank to receive a bi-monthly paper statement, that's important too. This is where online banking is such a benefit to us, because we can check at the end of every day, really. And it might sound a little too much, but we really need to hold on to our receipts and cross-reference every transaction with every receipt. And if something, if you don't have a receipt for something, or you truly are looking at your statement or looking at your credit card bill and not noticing or remembering what that payment was for, call your bank and just say, look, I do not remember doing this. And, best/worst case scenario, they'll put a little fraud alert on your account, or a freeze, or just extra closely monitor your accounts even more than they already are. We're very lucky. Our banks and our credit card companies are really looking out for us now. The big old catch-22 of all the scams that are going on. They're so closely monitoring, because they know how easy it is for scammers to get a hold of our information. But really look at even the small transactions, because what happens is it's much more lucrative for a scammer to scam 5,000 people out of $1 each than one person out of $5,000. I'm going to notice a $5,000 transaction on my statement. I may not notice a $1, $2, $3 transaction. And if I do notice it, how likely am I to act upon it? Am I going to call my bank and say, I don't remember what this dollar was for, And so the scammers know that we're less likely to act upon it, and then they can continue to do it and continue to withdraw that type of money.
Now, I know someone in my family who has been a victim of this, and she started noticing purchases on her account that were from places that she never goes to, like this type of store or that gas station across town. Is that also something that you can look for? Or are these people getting so good now that they're usually looking at what your purchasing patterns are and trying to hold that up?
Sure, that's actually a really great question. It can work either way. For the most part, we're not targeted specifically, so it is kind of at random, and when they get a hold of our information, they're just going to do with it what they want to do with it, but they will use the smaller transactions. But absolutely, if you know that you shop at this particular store, let's say, if you know that you shop at CVS and you're noticing, Rite Aid purchases popping up or Walgreens purchases popping up, that could certainly be, an obvious red flag to you. But there are scammers who will get a hold of your information, and they will already know your spending patterns. They maybe have gone through your mailbox, believe it or not, and taken out a catalog. And so they know that you purchased from this particular catalog, and so they're going to take it out, and they'll purchase from there, knowing that you may not realize that it wasn't actually you, it was someone else that was doing it, because it's not unusual to you.
That is really scary.
It is.
What a profession. So I wanted to touch upon these new chip cards that are out that have been in Europe and other countries forever, and we're just acclimating to them now. Some places have the readers, some don't. Some people don't have chips, some do. But there's a huge push by banks and creditors to make this technology be in everyone's pocket. What is the difference between the scanner and the chip, and how is it better?
It's a really good question, and I know I keep saying that, but these are all great questions. The chip is safer than the stripe, the magnetic stripe. The stripe has been on the cards for decades, really, for years, 40 years maybe, and that is the technology that the scammers have gotten used to using and manipulating, whereas the chip is a little bit more difficult. It's more encrypted. There's supposed to be a PIN associated with the chip itself as well. So we just tell people the closer you get to the chip, the better. So debit cards are a big no-no. Credit cards with the swiper, you still don't want to use the swiper because it's almost the same as using a debit card. And then using that chip and just hoping that eventually all of our merchants are going to switch over to the chip and PIN technology, which is what Europe has been using. You know, they've been using it in Europe for years and years. And just continuing to monitor. It's just one of those things. There's going to be breaches, there's going to be hacks, and honestly, one of the very basic things that we can do is to continue to monitor and to also run annual credit reports. It's very, very important that we do at least one credit report a year, because even if we're using, you know, the chip every time and we're checking our statements, it's very possible that someone could get a hold of our Social Security information and be using it. And sometimes the only way to detect if that's the case is if we run a credit report and we notice it, that there's, you know, lines of credit that have been opened up in our name, or you know, loans that have been taken out in our name. It's hard to detect that if we're not running those credit reports.
It's all been excellent information, Amy. I want to thank you for coming in. And before we end this, is there any additional information or things that we haven't touched on that you want to talk about?
Sure. I think it's just really important to know that you can contact the Better Business Bureau if you have a question about something, even as simple as a phone call that you've received from someone claiming to be from a real business or claiming to be from a real charity. Contact us just to verify what the phone number is, the contact information. If you've received a piece of mail, we have something called actually, I should mention we have an app. So you can visit our website, bbb.org, on a computer. We also have a free app that you can download from the App Store, which makes it easy because, you know, we're all on our phones 24 hours a day, but also a scam tracker in particular. So if you've received a phone call or a piece of mail or an email or anything, any piece of information that you can share with us, we take that information via our scam tracker and we share it with the Federal Trade Commission. And the more information that we're sharing with them and the authorities in general, the more likely it is that we can either you know, crack down on some of these scam artists and identity thieves, and B, just be able to continue to educate the community. Because again, you know, we're here today, and tomorrow there's going to be something new that pops up, and it's important that we're constantly updating our database and our information to be able to better serve the community and the seniors as well.
These are very good tactics to fight the tactics of the predators out there. So thank you again for coming in.
Thank you.
And thank you all for watching. I hope this has been a big help. We've been here with Amy Schram from the Better Business Bureau. Thanks for watching. I'm Geoff Wyman from FCTV. And keep watching.